My name is Arthur, and I've been driving this city for 35 years. I started with a meter and a roof light, back when folks still flagged you down with a hopeful wave. Now, it's all apps, GPS, and silent requests that pop up on a screen like cryptic fortunes. I've seen things you wouldn't believe. The city is a living thing, and I'm just its tired, four-wheeled confessional booth. Most drivers quit after the odd hours and the strange smells, but I stay. Why? Because every single passenger is a story waiting to be told, and I've become addicted to the prologue. Tonight, the city was breathing low, damp with a late November drizzle that slicked the asphalt and blurred the neon. It was 3 a.m., the kind of hour where respectable people are dreaming and the rest of us are chasing ghosts or avoiding them. My shift was nearly done, my old bones aching for the familiar comfort of my worn armchair, when the request pinged. A surge fare, naturally. Nobody orders a car at this hour for a pleasant trip to the grocery store. The pickup location was a dead spot downtown, an intersection known more for closed doors and flickering streetlights than for foot traffic. I accepted the ride, a small knot of anticipation tightening in my gut. After all these years, I still get that feeling, the electric hum that tells me this one isn't going to be a simple to-the-airport run. I pulled up slowly, the rain whispering against the windshield. The name on the app, Elias, was as plain as the grey brick wall he was standing in front of. He wasn't waving, he was just waiting. He was tall and thin, wearing a trench coat that looked 2 sizes too big for him, collar turned up high enough to hide most of his face. His luggage was a single old leather satchel that looked like it had survived a war, or maybe started one. I tapped the horn lightly. Elias didn't flinch, didn't seem surprised I was there. He just moved, with a deliberate, unnerving slowness, toward the back door. As he opened it, a sudden draft of cold air rushed into my warm cab, carrying with it a scent I couldn't quite place, something metallic like old coins and rain. He didn't look at me, just settled in the back, the heavy thud of his satchel on the floor mat echoing in the sudden silence. "Good evening," I said, my voice sounding rougher than usual. "Where are we headed tonight, Elias?" He cleared his throat. The sound was dry, like rustling paper. He spoke, and his voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it cut through the silence in a way that made me instantly alert. It wasn't the voice of a man who had been out partying or working late. It was the voice of a man who had been waiting for a long time. "It's not on your map, driver," he said. The words hung in the air. "It's a place I need to get to, but the destination, you'll have to drive. Just take the usual route out of the city, through the old industrial park, and then I'll direct you." I frowned, glancing down at the glowing GPS screen. This was the first hurdle, the subtle deviation from the norm that always precedes a truly memorable night. A trip not on the map. That's code for a detour to somewhere private, somewhere illicit, or somewhere I really shouldn't be. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My policy, learned through decades, is to never ask too many questions at the start. Curiosity is a slow poison in this line of work. "All right," I replied, my tone neutral, a practiced mask I've worn for decades. "The app requires a final destination, Elias, even if it's just a general address, something I can enter for the trip to formally start." This was a mandatory safety check, a flicker of professionalism overriding my increasing fascination. He sighed, a long, drawn-out exhalation that sounded more like relief than frustration. "Put in the coordinates for the old Miller sawmill," he instructed. "You know it? It closed down 20 years ago. We'll pass it, but that'll get the trip moving. Then we go further." Miller sawmill. Now that was a blast from the past. A crumbling brick monstrosity on the extreme edge of the city limits, bordering the national forest. I had driven people to its locked gates plenty of times, always men looking for trouble, or women looking to end it. I quickly input the derelict address. The app accepted it, the little blue line of the route immediately stretching out into the dark, wet unknown. The engine idled smoothly, but my heart was definitely not idling. It was accelerating. "Miller sawmill it is," I confirmed, pulling the gear stick into drive. The car slid smoothly away from the curb, leaving the grey wall behind. "It's a long drive out there," I hope you've had a better night than most folks I pick up at this hour. Silence. He didn't take the bait. He just shifted slightly in his seat, and I could catch a faint movement reflected in the rearview mirror. His head was turned, gazing out the side window at the receding city lights. They were vibrant, dancing reflections on the wet glass, yet Elias looked at them as if he were watching a ship sink. He seemed utterly detached, already somewhere else, somewhere cold. This was no ordinary fare. This wasn't a drunk trying to find his way home, or a tired nurse coming off shift. This man carried an aura of purpose, heavy and unsettling. His stillness was not calm. It was the coiled tension of a spring about to snap. I sensed a story of great weight, something that had been meticulously planned, and I, Arthur, the driver, was the final, indispensable piece of his elaborate puzzle. The emotional trigger had been pulled. My curiosity, mixed with an undercurrent of genuine professional apprehension, was rising fast, flooding my senses as we drove deeper into the isolating rain and the quiet hum of the lonely highway. I knew, with the certainty only a veteran of the city's underbelly can possess, that the destination was the least of this man's secrets. The destination was just where his story was scheduled to explode. The highway was a ribbon of black glass unrolling beneath my headlights, the city lights shrinking to a weak, hazy glow behind us. The rain hadn't let up. It was heavier now, a drumming rhythm that filled the cab, trying to drown out the silence shared with Elias. I kept my eyes on the road, but my attention was firmly fixed on the faint, dark shape in my rearview mirror. He hadn't moved since we left, maintaining that rigid posture, staring out at nothing. I'm good at silence. I can let it stretch thin until it snaps, forcing the passenger to speak. But Elias's silence wasn't ordinary. It wasn't the silence of exhaustion or simple lack of conversation. It was the silence of deep containment, like a pressure cooker holding a tremendous hidden heat. It began to feel less like a shared space and more like an active challenge. I had to break it, if only to remind him that I was a person, not a self-driving machine, and that both of us were subject to the physics of this particular journey. Nasty weather for a late-night ride, I offered, making my voice sound casual, almost bored. Going far past the sawmill, are we? Elias took his time answering. I could almost feel him considering the exact weight and implication of every word I'd spoken. When he finally responded, his voice was still low, but it held a new, sandpaper-like edge. Far enough, Arthur. Just keep driving. Don't worry about the destination now, worry about the road. It's getting tricky up ahead. My grip tightened again. He used my name. I hadn't told him my name. It was only visible on the small tablet mounted next to the dash. He'd clearly been paying attention, cataloguing details, which is a trait I associate with either the very careful or the deeply paranoid. And his instruction, worry about the road, sounded less like advice and more like a veiled warning. The vague sense of apprehension I felt earlier was morphing into something more distinct. Caution. The road is fine, I countered, perhaps a bit too quickly. I've driven this route hundreds of times, unless you know something I don't about the road conditions tonight. I tried to keep the tone light, but I was testing him, trying to find the crack in his controlled facade. Elias finally shifted, the movement loud in the quiet cab. I saw his reflection adjust slightly in the mirror. He was looking at me now, or at least at the back of my head. The darkness in the cab made it impossible to read his expression, which only amplified the tension. "The conditions are irrelevant," he said, the words carefully clipped. "It's the scenery that changes. You've seen a lot in your decades on the road, Arthur. Drunks, lovers, runaways, the whole parade. But have you ever driven someone who truly knew where they were going, but had no idea why? Now we were talking." This wasn't small talk. This was a question delivered with the weight of a confession already made, the kind of emotional trigger that slams the brakes on your soul. "Everyone has a reason, Elias," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes they just haven't admitted it yet, to themselves or to the driver." "No," he insisted, a faint bitterness seeping into his tone. "A reason implies a choice. I have a purpose, and that purpose is leading me to a blank space on your map, a place the modern world refuses to acknowledge. It's comforting in a way. that the digital world hasn't claimed every corner. We were passing the industrial park now. Warehouses stood like sleeping metal giants, their high windows reflecting the passing streaks of my headlights. The smell of cold, rusted steel was thick in the damp air. This area always felt transitional, the last vestiges of the city's commerce before the wilderness took over. I decided to push a little further, attempting to peel back one more layer of his reserve. "That leather satchel you have," I said, nodding slightly toward the bag on the floor. "It looks heavy. Business trip, Elias?" The silence that followed was instant and absolute, the air dropping several degrees. I immediately regretted the question. It felt intrusive, violating some unspoken code of the road. "It holds everything I need," he stated, his voice now devoid of inflection, flat and cold. "Everything I've collected, and everything I plan to leave behind. It's the summation of a life that took a very long detour, Arthur, and you are the last checkpoint." The word checkpoint hit me hard. It implied finality, scrutiny, and a necessary process. I felt a surge of adrenaline, mixed with an old, familiar fear. The fear that comes when you realize you've crossed the line from being a simple service provider to an unwilling participant in someone else's crisis. My breathing hitched slightly. The casual flow of the drive had completely ceased. We were accelerating down a steep, winding road of emotional peril, and I couldn't see the curve ahead. "I'm just the driver, Elias," I stated firmly, injecting a dose of professional detachment back into my voice. "My role ends when you exit the car. Nothing more." He chuckled then, a dry, unsettling sound that held no humor. "That's what they all say, Arthur. The people who think they can ferry a secret without ever touching its essence. But secrets stick. They seep into the upholstery. They ride with you long after the passenger has gone." He paused, and in the mirror, I could almost swear his shoulders relaxed slightly, as if he had finally shed a small, necessary burden. "Keep driving. The sawmill is just ahead. Once we pass those gates, you need to turn right onto the old service road. And trust me, that's where the map truly disappears." The tension had reached a palpable peak. It was no longer about the destination. It was about the contents of the satchel and the nature of Elias's purpose. I was now driving a vehicle containing a man on a self-declared non-negotiable mission, and my role was expanding beyond mere navigation. The emotional arc was soaring, from mild curiosity to undeniable professional concern, rapidly escalating toward a genuine, bone-deep fear of the unknown consequences awaiting us off the map. The Miller sawmill was exactly as I remembered it, a monument to economic failure and decay. We passed the rusted chain-link fence, the sign hanging by one bolt, a ghostly image in my headlights. The huge, silent complex, draped in wet vines and shadows, radiated a profound sense of abandonment. It was a place where things were irrevocably finished. "Turn right here," Elias instructed, his voice now calm, almost conversational, a stark contrast to the severity of his words moments before. "You see that path? It's overgrown but passable." I hesitated, slowing the car almost to a halt. The path was barely a track, a jagged tear in the underbrush, muddy and clearly unused for years. My old sedan was built for asphalt and city grime, not forest trails and potholes. But Elias's composure was magnetic, pulling me forward despite my better judgment. He had already established a dominant control over this journey. To refuse now would be to invite conflict I was truly hoping to avoid. I engaged the four-way flashers, a silent, futile gesture of recognition in this absolute darkness, and steered the car onto the service road. The tires immediately sank into the mud with a soft, sucking sound. The car lurched and groaned, the chassis scraping against rocks hidden by the thick growth. The rhythm of the rain was replaced by the chaotic thwack of branches hitting the glass and the unsettling crunch of gravel under the wheels. The smooth, accelerating flow of the highway was gone, replaced by a slow, agonizing crawl. This abrupt physical deceleration, however, only amplified the emotional tension in the cabin. "You're awfully quiet now, Arthur," Elias observed, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Worried about your suspension? It'll hold. They build these American cars tougher than you give them credit for. I'm worried about driving a paying fare to a location that looks less like a destination and more like a dumping ground, Elias," I admitted, my voice tight. I didn't bother trying to hide my irritation or fear anymore. We were too deep. What is out here? We're miles past the last sign of civilization. He chuckled again, that dry, unsettling sound. Civilization is highly overrated, driver. What's out here is quiet, and a very old promise that needs to be kept. He reached into the pocket of his trench coat and pulled out a small, heavy object. I couldn't see what it was, but the metallic clink was distinct. Then he spoke, and this time his voice dropped even lower, becoming a resonant, intimate hum, like a secret meant only for the two of us. I came here 30 years ago, not to this exact spot, but close enough. I was younger then, dumber, chasing something I thought was love, when in fact, it was simply a contract. He paused, letting the word contract hang heavy in the air, a legal term made sinister by the location and the hour. The atmosphere inside the car shifted instantly from simple fear of the unknown to the specific, terrifying realization that I was transporting a man tied to a long-ago clandestine event. This was the first true narrative gate, and it was opening directly onto a criminal past. My adrenaline spiked. The emotional acceleration was back on, fueled by a sharp sense of self-preservation. A contract for what? I asked, my breathing shallow. I knew I shouldn't press, but the sudden, deliberate sharing of information made silence impossible. For my freedom, he responded simply. I was supposed to deliver something, a piece of evidence, to someone waiting in a cabin just beyond this ridge. I did the delivery. I got my exit from a very complicated life, and I swore I'd never look back. The contract was simple. Deliver the proof, walk away clean, and never, ever speak the name of the organization again. He was telling me he was an ex-informant, an ex-enforcer, or something far worse. The mystery of the destination was collapsing into the reality of his escape. "And you're coming back now," I whispered, the rain of furious static over his words. "Why break that promise?" Elias leaned forward, resting his hands on the back of my seat. I felt the pressure through the worn fabric. "Because the terms changed, Arthur. They contacted me. Not through the phone, not through the mail. They left a signal, a message only I would recognize, saying they required a final service. A cleanup. This satchel," he tapped the leather bag with his foot. "It contains the original damning evidence I gave them 30 years ago. They want it buried here, destroyed, wiped from existence. They want the loose end tied. And if I refuse, well, they have ways of making sure my life and the quiet peace I built are also destroyed." The car bounced over a particularly nasty rut, the sudden physical jolt mimicking the violent rush of realization in my mind. He wasn't just a passenger. He was a man being blackmailed into burying the proof of his own dark past, using my car as the hearse. The destination didn't exist on the map, because it was a cemetery for secrets. The emotional temperature was now critical, a white-hot mix of pity, fear, and morbid fascination, driving us deeper into the oppressive darkness of the unknown. "How much further?" I asked, my voice barely audible above the engine's strained protest. "Just over the ridge, Arthur. And then we finish the story." He paused, and I heard the faint, unsettling click of the heavy object from his pocket being handled again. "Just keep the lights on, driver. I need to see what I'm doing when we stop." We crested the ridge, the car struggling up the muddy incline one final time before the terrain leveled out abruptly. Through the sheeting rain, the headlights cut across a small, circular clearing. It wasn't natural. The trees had been aggressively cleared decades ago, leaving a perimeter of gnarled stumps and secondary growth. Right in the center, nearly swallowed by the darkness, was a small, dilapidated structure, the cabin Elias had mentioned. It looked less like a shelter and more like a wound on the landscape. I stopped the car exactly in the middle of the clearing, the beam of my lights bathing the front of the cabin in a harsh, unforgiving white. The engine idled, a lonely, defiant sound in the vast silence of the surrounding forest. The rain hammered down, turning the clearing floor into a sheet of glistening mud. "This is it," Elias murmured, his voice now flat, resigned. He sounded like a man who had finally reached the gallows and was simply waiting for the drop. The tension in the car was so thick I felt like I was breathing cement. I killed the engine. The sudden, profound silence was startling, filled only by the relentless hiss of the rain. I kept my hands on the wheel, my eyes scanning the perimeter. Was the organization watching? Were they waiting for us to complete the task? The thought of unseen eyes in the dark woods sent a shiver straight down my spine. The emotional intensity had shifted from internal anxiety to external, tangible fear. "So, what happens now, Elias?" I asked, keeping my voice low and steady. "You bury the satchel, and then what? I take you back?" He turned his head slowly and looked directly at me. It was the first time I had clearly seen his eyes in the interior light. They were sunken, weary, and held a depth of sorrow that transcended a simple fear of discovery. "You wait for me, Arthur," he commanded, but there was no malice in the tone, only exhausted necessity. "I go to the back of the cabin. There's a marker there, under an old oak. I dig the hole. I place the satchel, and I cover it. It won't take long." He reached for the back door handle, his hand trembling slightly. As he moved to exit, the metallic object he had been handling earlier slid from his pocket and landed on the floor mat with a dull, heavy thud. It was a small, blued steel revolver, old, well-maintained, and utterly real. My breath caught in my throat. Every alarm bell that decades of driving had installed in my nervous system went off simultaneously. The emotional acceleration hit its terrifying zenith. I wasn't just transporting a secret. I was sitting next to a potentially desperate armed man who was about to finish a job. "Elias," I said, my voice barely a whisper, forcing myself to look straight ahead, not at the weapon. "That's not going to be necessary. You bury your package and we leave. I don't want any part of this. I'm just the driver." He didn't acknowledge the gun immediately. He simply opened the door. The cold, wet air rushed in, carrying the clean, earthy smell of the forest. He stepped out, the heavy leather satchel grasped tightly in one hand. The rain instantly plastered his thin coat to his frame. Then he stopped, leaning back into the car, his eyes meeting mine again. He saw the naked fear in my face, and a flicker of something, regret perhaps, crossed his own. "Arthur," he said, the sound of my name now a pronouncement, a final address. "You asked why I would break my promise. They didn't just ask me to bury the evidence. They asked me to bury the truth, and that truth is not just paper. The original terms were a lie. They were never going to let me go." He paused, glancing down at the gun by my feet. "That weapon is not for you, Arthur. It's for the final punctuation mark of my own life. I won't spend the rest of my years looking over my shoulder, waiting for the consequences of a debt I already paid. They want the evidence destroyed so they can frame someone else. That can't happen." This was the ultimate twist, the final, desperate confession. He wasn't burying the evidence to save himself, he was burying it to protect someone else from a frame job, and he intended to end his own life to ensure his silence was permanent. The raw, desperate humanity of his decision momentarily eclipsed my fear. The emotional curve twisted, dipping into profound empathy and sorrow. He pulled himself fully out of the car. "Wait here, Arthur. If you hear anything other than the rain, you drive. You don't look back. You tell no one you were here." He shut the door. The click of the latch was deafening. I watched in my side mirror as Elias, the satchel clutched against his chest, walked away from the light and into the suffocating darkness at the back of the cabin. I was left alone in the clearing, the idling engine a nervous, constant beat, with a deadly blued steel revolver sitting on the floor mat by my left foot. I sat there, rigid, listening not just to the rain, but to the silence, waiting for the sound that would either signal his return or the end of his 30-year detour.